All right, welcome everyone to Dispatches from the Field, an exciting new initiative from the Explorers Club designed to pull our amazing membership together from all around the world and really be able to lean into the incredible work that our members are doing. Highlight them, share them, learn about them, and be able to connect with each other. So if this is your first time joining, let me tell you a little bit about how it's going to work. We're going to immediately start off with our featured speaker who's going to share some tales about what it is that they've been doing. Prepare to be amazed. After that, we're going to do the campfire sessions where we're going to split up into small groups and be able to connect with each other, get to know each other a little bit more, talk about the talk about what we're working on, and then lead from there. So with no further ado, allow me to introduce to you our featured speaker today, West Hansen. Our featured speaker is no stranger to pushing the limits of human experience. At 50, the ripe young age of 50, West Hansen led his first expedition as a National Geographic explorer, becoming the first to paddle the entire 4,200-mile Amazon River from its most distant source. He followed that by kayaking Europe's longest river, 2,200-mile Volga River in Russia, and at 61 completed the first human-powered navigation of the entire 1,600-mile Northwest Passage in 2 tandem kayaks. He is a record-holding ultramarathon paddler, director of the Explorers Club Texas chapter, proudly for all of you out there. And as I just found out, he's about to embark on another challenge for fun, a 1,000-mile canoe race down the Yukon River. No small feat. He brings the heart of an explorer and the compassion of a social worker to every single journey. Please welcome West Hansen.
Thanks so much, Brandy. I appreciate it. And it's nice to see a lot of familiar faces out there. We've got one of our Arctic Cowboy team members joining us, Tom McGuire. I see he's out there. He was our tech guy in charge of everything that required more than 4 syllables and technology. Tom did our website, a lot of our tracking and other things that I don't understand at all. So we really appreciate his help there. And then my cousin Sherry Manning, who's also part of the Texas chapter, is on board. So it's great to see some familiar faces out there. I'm gonna talk a little bit about the Northwest Passage specifically, and then open it up to some questions after that. What we did in 2023 was, as Brandy mentioned, the first human-powered navigation of the 1,600-mile Northwest Passage. Now, historically, expeditions didn't have a scientific component. It was kind of a secondary thing or even a third thing. The idea of science being part of exploration is a more recent uh, issue over the past 20 or 30 years. Uh, in centuries past, expeditions were based upon commerce, trade, geopolitical issues, and even as recent as the 1960s, military issues. The whole space race was launched in the United States by JFK and others based upon the Soviet accomplishments in space. So science is fairly new to the world of exploration, and that holds true for the Northwest Passage, which was originally sought as a safer route between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans than the Drake Passage on the southern tip of South America, which is a shipwreck, haven, and graveyard for thousands of ships throughout history. Eventually, a little over a century ago, the Panama Canal was dug in Central America, which opened up a second way to get between the Atlantic and Pacific. Um, since the late 1400s, the Northwest Passage has been sought uh, with the idea that the North Pole or the polar regions, the Arctic, was a tropical paradise. Once um, ship captains were able to break through a barrier of ice, then they'd be opened up to this tropical area that would link the what was then known as the Orient with Europe and Southern Asian countries. Um, Sebastian Cabot was the first European explorer to try to get through the Northwest Passage, or at least try to find one, and then a succession of other explorers all up to the infamous Franklin expedition in the mid 1800s. And that's what really brought the Northwest Passage into the fore of popular culture, because that was such a highly and well-funded expedition with the most modern technology available, and it just disappeared for decades. And eventually the ships were found over 150 years later off of King William Island in the Northwest Passage. But no one until Roald Amundsen had been able to navigate the Northwest Passage. It wasn't open. The ice was froze the entire area until 1906 with Roald Amundsen, and he took about 3 years to make it. Took another 50 years for the Canadian ship St. Roch to make it through. Then after that, it started becoming more and more of a common thing after about 50 years. More recently, in the past 20, 25 years, people have tried to row it or paddle it through with kayaks, but the ice accumulation was still too dense to allow such a thing. Our expedition, as I've mentioned in the title of this presentation, was a canary in the coal mine. The fact that we were able to put together two tandem sea kayaks and paddle through this area that lies between the Canadian mainland and the North Pole, this archipelago, was a testament to the warming of the area and how this sea route, the third most viable sea route between the Atlantic and Pacific, is going to be quickly opened up and become a superhighway for super tankers. And this entire area, as we're seeing now, is a chance for us to see what this area is going to be like, or what this region is going to be like before the advent of the industrial boom that's going to happen up there. It takes roughly 10 less days to travel between, let's say, England and Japan going through the Northwest Passage than it does through the Panama Canal. The Panama Canal is bottlenecked right now. It takes about $5 million for a ship to get moved further up in line. Uh, they have to face hurricanes in the Atlantic and cyclones in the Pacific that take ships down every year. By contrast, the areas in the North Sea and the North Pacific, or the North Atlantic and North Pacific, much calmer conditions, less treacherous, and just much faster. So therefore, saving a lot of money to go through the Northwest Passage. Uh, and to put a finer point on it, until recently, most news cycles haven't featured Greenland or Canada. They've been our friends to the north, and Greenland has been this great place to visit that explorers go to all the time to ski across its ice cap. And we have a military base up there in northern Canada, the US does. But we really haven't heard too much about Greenland and Canada until now. And a lot of y'all may have noticed that Greenland and Canada have been making it to the news lately, because the Northwest Passage is bordered by Greenland and Canada, most of which is within the uh, uh, within the country of Canada itself. In other words, you can't get through the Northwest Passage without going through Canada, 1,600 miles through Canada. So Canada has legal and geopolitical authority over the entire Northwest Passage. So whatever happens there in the future will be governed strictly by Canadian law and Canadian province. Um, we undertook this expedition and we were unsupported except for one resupply about 800 miles through in the town of Cambridge Bay. We took about 105 days total, though. Two of those 2 weeks beforehand were spent just trying to get through the ice to start the expedition. And we, as soon as the ice cleared, then we were fit to go. Most of the time we had to, well, in fact, all the time we were dictated by the weather. If wind and waves and ice were too rough, we ended up camping out on shore for 5 to 6 days at a time. Sometimes it was just overnight, but we couldn't progress unless the conditions were ideal. It was too dangerous to take any chances with the wind and waves and storms, because there was little chance of rescue up there in what is a pretty desolate area of the world. So we were very prudent, very cautious, and we didn't take risks at all if we could avoid it, because just being there was a risk to all four of us that participated in the kayaking portion of the expedition. Um, I can rattle on for days, but I think at this point, Brandy, it might be a good idea to open it up for some comments or questions.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of comments and questions when we break out into the campfire session, West, but
Oh, okay.
I see that Bruce is popping some links into the chat. And I think I just want to take a moment to, I mean, because it's so fascinating how the change in the ice is opening up this opportunity. What are you seeing as being some of the big potential environmental concerns to the incoming boom in this particular passage?
Well, thanks for bringing that up. And as I mentioned, the fact that we were able to get through there indicates how much the ice has melted or become less of an issue up there. The the impact not only will be the obvious environmental changes, but also the cultural. Environmentally, right now, there's a lot of, not a lot, but there's an increase in freighter activity from the mines that have opened up in that area, because the Northwest Passage, as I mentioned, between mainland Canada and the North Pole, this archipelago, this huge archipelago, contains some very rich and fairly untapped mineral and petrochemical resources. A lot of oil drilling has opened up in the area, mining. Some of the richest iron ore is being mined out of Baffinland mine right now. So, and then diamond mines as well. So the freighters up there have been ordered, and there's a mandate now that they have to stay below 6 knots when going through specific areas of the passage, because anything faster than that has interrupted whale migration. The narwhal, bowhead whales, and orca, as well as um, uh, the beluga whales, migrate there every season in throughout the passage. The sound of the engines really disrupts their ability to communicate and navigate throughout that area. So that's just one example of the environmental impact upon the species up there. Um, the climate warming, it's not just change, it's a specific warming up there in the passage. Most recently, just last week, our mentor in the town of Mittamadelic, which is also known as Pond Inlet, reported the first, and he was born and raised there, the first mosquitoes ever in Mittamadelic, which is at the eastern end of the Northwest Passage. So the changes are going to be pretty abrupt after from here on out, if not exponential. For the people of the region, who are also known as Inuit, and that's a slight discernment from Eskimo, because there are some Inuit who identify as Eskimo, but not every Inuit is an Eskimo. So it's very careful to make that distinction. But the Inuit is Nuktatuk for uh, people, the people. So the people in the region that have lived up there for thousands of years uh, are being impacted with this sudden influx of money and commerce. So a lot of money is being poured into that area, and all of a sudden, people that hadn't had money throughout their life have thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, which which has really disrupted a lot of their traditional hunting and fishing and ways of life that is almost immeasurable at this point. And I'm not saying necessarily that we shouldn't, or industry shouldn't be giving the people the money they're doing for the land and waters that they control, but it should be important to recognize that this is going to have some deleterious impact on the area, as well as possible advantages for education and healthcare. So it's a real messy soup when you start throwing industry and money into a particular area that haven't traditionally had those things.
Thank you so much for giving the extra context on that. And thank you, Wes, for sharing not only the history of it, how it's changed, how how your expedition has been able to open our eyes to not only the feat of physical endurance that you went through and everything else involving that, but what's coming up on the horizon with really what's going to be coming down the pipe with this economic opportunity of a faster, cheaper way of doing it and all of the potential impacts around that too. Thank you so much for joining us. Uh, I'm sure everybody has individual questions, so let's dive into the campfire sessions. And as some of you may know, the belle of the ball, West Hansen, will be bouncing around in between the different campfire groups. So hang tight. If you have questions, he'll be coming. I'll see you all afterwards.